Hello and welcome to Short Scary Stories. In this episode, we will be looking at third person stories. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please do so and like this video, it helps out a lot. On to the stories. There's a girl driving along I-70 on the way back to Colorado after visiting her relatives in Illinois. It's about 1 a.m. and it starts raining when she realizes she's almost out of gas. She sees a sign for a gas station about 3 miles ahead and breathes a sigh of relief. But when she gets there, it's one of those old, run-down, family-owned gas stations. She's scared to stop but really has no other choice. As she pulls in, an old man with disfigured face comes running through the rain. He puts the pump into the tank and asks for her credit card. She hands it to him over the top of the window and he runs back inside. After a few seconds, he comes back out and tells the girl she was going to have to come inside as her card had been declined. Reluctantly, she walks inside. The man grabs her and tries to tell her something, but she hits him with a can of oil sitting on the counter. She runs back to her car and takes off with the old man screaming and flailing his arms at her. After driving a few miles, she turns on the radio and starts to relax. As she looks in the rearview mirror, she hears someone pop his head back up in the seat holding an axe above her head. That's the last thing she ever saw. Apparently, the old man at the gas station was trying to warn her. Once there was a young woman who had a child but couldn't afford to take care of it by herself. So she put the blue baby bonnet on its head and carried it 2 miles from the house and left it in the woods. As she began to walk home, she heard, "Blue baby bonnet 1 mile away." As she reaches her home, she hears, "Blue baby bonnet 1 mile away." As she sits in her living room to read a book, she hears, "Blue baby bonnet coming up the driveway." She runs upstairs and sits on her bed. She hears, "Blue baby bonnet standing at your door." She hides under the bed and hears, "Blue baby boo!" Crack. Something snapping or being trampled on. The man sits in his room reading. The room is silent except for the quiet fire burning. Creak. Just the house settling, nothing more. Crack. Perhaps some small animals outdoors. Whoosh. What was that wind? The man stands up and peeks out the window. A clear night is all he sees. The full moon brilliant in the sky. Laughing at his nervousness, he turns back to read his book. Creak. The man now silently chuckles at the sound. Crack. How could he be scared of such sounds? Whoosh. Must be breezy out tonight. Thump. Did that come from the house? The man stares into the fire, trying to calm his jangled nerves. Creak, crack, whoosh. Will these sounds ever cease? Thump, thump. The closer he thinks the sounds are coming. He shuts the book and closes his eyes and thinks it must have just been his wildest imagination. Creak, thump, crack, thump, whoosh. Thump, thump. A pause? The man moves quietly, slowly, towards the door with a nervous gait. Thump. A step back. Thump. Yes, getting closer. Thump. He stares at the door, trying to see through it. Thump. He reaches slowly for the doorknob, his hand shaking, no longer being able to know if he can open it. Creak. A loose floorboard near the outside. Thump. He slowly opens the door. Silence. Ever since Julie was a little girl, when she got scared, she would put her hand under her bed, and the dog would lick her hand to comfort her. Well, now, Julie was 14 and her parents were going out, and it was going to be a late night. Julie didn't want to stay home alone, but her parents told her she was old enough to stay home alone, she'd be fine. Well, Julie's parents left at 8 p.m., and after an hour of watching TV, Julie went to bed. She was kind of scared, sleeping with no one home, when she heard a whimpering sound, almost like a puppy whining. She put her hand under her bed and her dog licked her hand. So she tried to fall asleep again. She heard it again, that little whimpering sound. So she put her hand under her bed and her dog licked it. She finally fell asleep and was woken up in the morning to the sound of her dog barking in the backyard. He had been outside the whole night. Once there were two girls who shared a college dorm together. Their names were Meg and Vienna. The girls were out partying one night. Meg noticed she forgot her purse and went quickly back into the dorm. Without turning on the lights, she walked in to grab her purse. Then she returned to the party. Later that night, Vienna got tired. She left to the dorm to go back to sleep. The next morning, Meg went back into the dorm. The police officers were outside. "Officer, what's the problem?" she asked. "There's been a murder." "Oh my God, let me see." "No, it's a bit too sloppy," said the officer. "Please." Finally, the officer let Vienna upstairs. When she walked into the room, she saw her roommate covered with a clean white sheet. On the mirror read big letters, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" ? It was late one night, rainy and dark. A young woman was driving home from her work after a long, tiring day. Her two-seater pickup truck had been driving on steadily through the rain for the last half hour, and she still had another half hour to go before she got home. As she made to turn onto a fork in the road, she happened to glance down and notice her fuel gauge. "Oh no," she thought. The needle was hovering right above the empty mark. Sighing, she continued on and left to go to a gas station that was not very far away. The station was almost empty, only one other car being filled up, an old red Nissan. The woman waved a weary hello to the driver and he waved back with equal tiredness. Apparently she wasn't the only one driving home late that night. After her bill had been paid and her car was burping with satisfaction at its full tank of gas, the woman climbed back into the passenger seat. She started the engine and closed the window, which she had left open to grab her wallet, driving on into the pouring rain. As she pulled out of the gas station, she noticed the driver of the red Nissan leaping into his car and speeding off behind her. How odd, she thought. Maybe he got an urgent phone call. But the Nissan didn't pass her when it came up behind her. The man drove at the same pace as her, revving his engine loudly. What is going on here? The woman wondered nervously. As she put her blinker on to go to the right fork again, the Nissan driver suddenly turned his brights on, blinding her as she tried to look in the rearview mirror. "What the?" she gasped out loud, pressing down hard on the gas and speeding ahead. The Nissan could keep pace, though, and was soon behind her again. There went the driver again, flashing his brights, once for a few seconds before turning them down again. "Maybe he wants to pull me over," the woman thought nervously. "Perhaps I have an oil leak or something." But as she turned her wheel to head to the soft shoulder on the side of the road, the man revved his engine powerfully, almost angrily, again, and flashed the Nissan's brights, almost bumping the back of the pickup as he surged forward behind her. He wanted her to keep going. Her heart racing now, the woman pressed the gas pedal down hard and watched the driver in the rearview mirror. He would flash his brights every 20 seconds or so, keeping them on for a brief time before turning them off again and revving his engine furiously. On, off, vroom, vroom. The woman's fingers grabbed the wheel tighter. What would he do if she tried to get away from him? Would he force her off the road? On, off, vroom, vroom. Deciding to take the chance, the woman turned her wheel and suddenly went speeding into the lane in the opposite direction, which was southbound instead of northbound. The Nissan driver kept his brights on for a long time as he skidded across the empty northbound and followed her. Oh no, he seemed like a skilled driver. As she headed back the way she came, the woman swerved, took shortcuts, doubled back, trying to lose the Nissan. But it remained steadfastly tailing her, the brights flashing blindly every few moments. On, off. Rain drove down harder against the roof. On, off. The truck's tires squealed as the woman desperately tried to lose the Nissan under an overpass. On, off. The woman's hands pounded hard on the dashboard in terrible fear and frustration as the tears began to flow. Suddenly, a glowing neon light showed itself just as They were going down the road as the woman turned a corner, back to the gas station. Nearly choking with relief, the woman's pickup whined loudly as she gunned it towards the shelter and safety of the station. Her brakes screeched as she pulled in beside the gas pump, and before the truck had even come to a stop, she was leaping out of it and sprinting towards the door. She burst in, out of breath and screaming, startling the old woman at the candy counter and the man sleeping in the chair in the corner. She explained breathlessly to them and the police on the phone what had happened. Suddenly, the gas station's door burst open and a man in dark clothes came out of the storm. Having just finished her story over the phone with the police, the woman screamed, dropping the phone, and fled, taking refuge in the broom closet and locking herself in until the police arrived minutes later. It was only then she came from the closet and learned the truth. The driver of the red Nissan was not trying to harm her. He was trying to save her. As he has been preparing to pay his gas bill, he had seen a man run out of the bushes behind the gas station and climb into the crawl space behind the seats of the woman's truck, entering in through the open window. When the woman had drove away, the Nissan driver had taken off behind her. As he was trying to pull her over, he had seen the dark figure rise up beneath the seats, a knife raised in hand. Knowing that if the woman pulled over, she would have had not enough time to escape, the man had done all he could and flashed his brights, casting the mysterious killer in light and causing him to duck down again. He had followed the woman desperately, continually flashing his lights at the man in her back seat as that guy continued to try to stab her. After the police heard the man's story, they checked the woman's truck and found, curled up in the back seat, a serial killer that had recently escaped from a jail, a knife clutched in his hand.